with the HP team. We're specifically focusing on Codar today. I'd like to welcome you and let you know that we have a number of great presentations, and we'd love to get your questions. So this is not necessarily a presentation, but an opportunity to dialogue with the Vivit community. So feel free to ask questions as we move along, and I'll walk through that a little bit. So as we get started, I want to introduce both myself and the HP team that will be presenting here. I guess next slide. So this is a presentation from Vivit. I'll be the host, answering the questions that you'll be providing, also helping you with the polling questions. And with that, I wanted to introduce you our presenter here. Next slide. So Ajay Nair. Ajay is the Global DevOps Technical Lead for HP. He's an expert in this field, been engaged for many years. He's got a reference system with HP that is pretty intriguing. We're especially going to be focusing on the newest innovative product called Codar. Next slide. Since this is a new product, we want to make sure that we get this recorded, and we're going to be putting this off for the wider Vivit community to come back and revisit this. At the same time, we are going to have questions. Unfortunately, your lines are all muted, so you will have to use the questions in the panel. And we do a little bit of housekeeping on the side here. I'll be monitoring that. If you want to go to the next slide. Just drop your questions in here, down at the box inside here. As we move the presentation along, I'll be monitoring those questions and interjecting and bringing those up at the appropriate times so that Ajay can address those and incorporate those into his presentation. So with that, I wanted to kind of introduce you to our presenter and get started with a couple of questions. DevOps is not an answer in a silo. It is typically a more holistic approach to doing the things we've always done with software and with our technology pieces. And with that, we'd like to get an idea of why you're here, and we've got some polling questions for you. So the question we'd like to put out to the community here today is which DevOps concepts have you implemented or plan to implement? You can check any one or more of the presentations down below, and we'll give you everybody a few seconds to kind of answer the panel question. And as you're answering the panel question, I want to introduce you to Ajay. Ajay, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. So Ajay, as our folks are introducing themselves on the line, maybe you want to address the polling questions about integration, test, delivery, deployment, and assessments. All of those have been wrapped up in DevOps conversations, and maybe you could do a little bit of your background in terms of how you're involved with the DevOps community.
Sure. Thank you, Paul. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the part of the world. Thank you for joining at the webinar. Today we'll talk about DevOps and how HP can take you to the DevOps journey, utilizing some of the HP software products, and also one of the most innovative products that HP has come up with in the application release automation cycle is the Codar, which is basically radar for your code, right? It allows you to deploy application, but at the same time it also provides you with a declarative modeling technology that you can leverage for modeling so that you can consistently deploy application as you go over, promote your code from dev to QA to staging. And you will see that more as we progress through the entire slide deck, okay?
Okay. So I don't know if we've got the results of the polling questions. Here we go. So a number of folks have about the largest interesting implementation of DevOps is continuous testing at 68%, followed closely behind continuous integration. And then it's kind of about half and half here with continuous delivery and continuous deployment. And then the concept of continuous assessment looks like it's got 16%. It's probably the area with the least amount of knowledge or insight. So with that, Ajay, I appreciate the feedback on the polling here. I'll hand it off to you, and maybe we can get started, and you can introduce us to Codar from HP.
Sure. Thank you. And I think I totally understand the response to the polling question. Continuous assessment is low because that's a term that has just been carved out. And if you look at, through Gartner, if you look at the analysts too, they are also emphasizing on continuous assessment. But you have provided the right answer. We start with continuous integration. Continuous testing plays a big role. And then if you do continuous integration and continuous testing, you really are achieving continuous delivery and continuous deployment. There are multiple definitions for continuous delivery and continuous deployment because continuous delivery for some people is basically saying that, okay, I get my code, I test my code, and then when I come to staging, I stop over there. I have a gate at the staging level, life cycle. And then basically I need some approval from the business or from the product owner to really move forward and put it into, production. Whereas continuous deployment is all about, I don't have the gate. I just go, straight from dev. I automate the entire process. Once I build the code, I go deploy the code into dev, test it, go deploy into QA, go test it, and then go to staging, go test it, and then just deploy it into production. But there's a lot of things. There's automation. It's all about automation, and also at the same time, you also need to make sure that you are not deploying something if the tests have failed. So the automation really needs to play a very big role when you're doing continuous deployment. So I will go further and I will explain. I think the research is very good. We totally understand what you are looking at, and we will cover our slide deck based on that. So what are we going to cover today, right? We'll start with why DevOps. Everybody is talking about DevOps, so we really need to know why. And then what are the challenges that, enterprise is facing today with velocity, right? How do I release my application faster into production? And then we'll talk about the HP DevOps point of vision. And we'll get into our solution approach. And then we will briefly talk about the technology mapping. Like, when you talk about DevOps, DevOps is not just about, tools, right? It's all about process, people, process, and technology. And technology plays a big role. There are multiple tools. There are development tools. There are deployment tools. There are planning tools. So you need to take everything into consideration when you're taking the DevOps journey. And we will cover that from an HP perspective. And then we will cover why HP software professional services, right? Because if you look at DevOps, DevOps is a services-led engagement, from a point of view that you really need to look from integration, collaboration, and everything. So we think that DevOps is a very big services-led engagement with products enabling the journey, right? So let's take a look at why DevOps. The reason we are talking about DevOps is today we have shifted, right? The market trends have shifted. There's a shift in focus of the customer. Traditionally, all the IT organization was basically worried about was, how do I deploy an application? How do I maintain my SLA? How do I keep the lights on? Right? That's where we were always concentrating on. It was always an internal driven, right? It was everything internally in the enterprise itself. Whereas now you are talking about customer driven, right? Everything is driven by the customer. You go to a departmental store. If you don't like, the service over there, you're not going to go over there. You stop going over there. Or you go to a website, and if you don't get the response to buy something, you're going to a different vendor completely and go get it. Even if it costs a little more, you are always worried about the service. So it's all about services are driven by the customer. So now IT needs to change. The new way of IT is basically how do I make sure that I am able to provide the functionality, provide the services that my customers require, and I can keep up with my competitors, because my competitors are going to catch up with me. If they come up with a new functionality and they can release it faster, most of the customers are going to go over there. So that's why we are talking about DevOps. It's all about collaboration. How do I break the wall between the dev, QA, and the ops side, but at the same time bringing the business and the architects also into the picture. And you will see that as we move forward, okay? So let's look at traditionally from a waterfall perspective, right? When we were traditionally doing software development, it was all about, the walls between dev, QA, and the ops guys. We wanted to, then we said, okay, you know what? I have mobile apps, I have web apps. Now I really need to do something faster. That's where Agile came into picture. And when Agile came into picture, it was basically, dev and test started working together. Development and test team, QA teams started working together very well. But there, again, the bottleneck was with, ops side. because what was happening in waterfall was basically dev was writing the code, handing it over to QA. QA was writing the test cases, running the test sets, and then basically handing it over to production ops guy and saying that, okay, now you take it and it's your responsibility to make sure it works in production. Ops didn't have any knowledge on how to go about deploying this application. That's changing. With Agile, at least the dev and QA guys started working together, where now when the dev guy is writing the code, QA guy is writing the test cases at the same time. It's not waiting for the code to be developed before starting to write the test cases. But again, the bottleneck is again the ops guy, right? There's a wall between this, the Agile team, that is the dev and QA team, and then the ops guy, because now ops again has handed over the final thing and asked to go deploy it in production. And then now we are talking about DevOps. And what we are saying is that let's bring all the three guys together. It's all about collaboration, right? We bring the dev, the test, and the ops guy together. And then we basically say that they all share the responsibility. They are responsible for the end result. If the application does not work in production, it's all three who's responsible for making sure that what is the issue. They all three need to spend the weekends, right? It's just not the ops guy spending the weekend and trying to figure out what is the issue, whether the issue is with the code or whether the issue is with the infrastructure. Okay, so we are talking about changing. We are talking about one integrated team where all the guys are brought together, and it's all about shifting left, where they start working together from the planning and defining stage itself. And you will see as we move forward as to how HP really talks about that. So let's look at the release velocity challenges, right? Now we saw that, development team is Agile. QA guys and dev team is working together. But the ops guy is still not Agile, right? So the bottleneck over here is developers want to really go faster because they are able to do it. They have started embracing the Agile methodologies. Whereas when you get into the ops side, the ops guy is really worried about how do I keep the lights on. So he really does not want changes. He wants to reduce the change impact. And that's why there's a wall between. And that's the bottleneck we need to really take off. And that's where DevOps is going to play a big role by taking the wall off between the development team and the operations team. So let's start with HP's point of view. So, HP started working on DevOps, and as you all know that HP has a big portfolio of products. We started looking into it, and we started saying, how do we play into the DevOps role, right, in the DevOps space? And what we came up with was that, basically, DevOps is all about automation, collaboration, governance, integration, because it's integration with multiple products. You're bringing monitoring, you're bringing portfolio, everything needs to be integrated, and also you are integrating with, now we are talking about analytics too. So a lot of integration needs to be happening if you want to really go, create the end-to-end DevOps reference implementation, right? And if you follow the four, you are automatically getting quality. Everybody is worried about quality. If I'm going to release a product, I really want to release a application that has better quality, not something that has where I have like 20% defects leaked. I really want to reduce those, and DevOps is going to really help us reduce those, because we are going to shift left testing, shift left monitoring, just shifting left the planning and defining, so we know exactly what the outcome is going to be, and we're going to test in all cycles with everybody working together. So that way we are going to make sure that whatever we release in production is going to be a quality product. Okay. And HP software uses DevOps to basically make sure that when we release our software, we have, it's not that I can say that it's 100% defect free. There are few defects that will always be there, but we are at least getting 90 to 95% of defect free, right? That's how we are leveraging DevOps within HP. Okay, so it basically allows you to improve the quality of the code, because you are talking, you are thinking about changing the code practices. You really need to think about how do I really break my applications where my applications are not tightly coupled, they are loosely coupled, right? Small modules. So there are a lot of code practices that also needs to go into places when you are taking the DevOps journey. It's not just about saying that, hey, I'm going to go do DevOps, without having the core practices taken. So it's a lot of assessment, maturity models, so you really need to understand everything so you can start really implementing DevOps, the end-to-end vision of DevOps. And security also plays a big role within DevOps. Okay. We will take a look at HP's approach, and I think this is where your polling is going to help us over here, right? If you look at HP's approach, we start with continuous integration and testing. Planning and defining is very key, right? Because we already spoke about shift-left planning. And planning is where you are going to take into picture the requirements, the application requirements, the test case requirements, the infrastructure requirements, the platform requirements. Everything is really, decided in the planning and defining stage. And this is where, architects can come and play a big role. They can say, hey, you know what, you guys are thinking about writing this application code on this platform. We don't support that. We don't want to use that. So those kind of thing really comes out, and people can decide on the right platform, right supporting platform, so that they can maintain it. Then we get into the continuous integration lifecycle, right? Continuous integration is all about build verification. It's and if you look at continuous integration by itself, HP really does not have a tool that does continuous integration, right? HP. What we do is we integrate with the third-party development tools like the IDE tools, the source code management tool, the CI tool itself. So we integrate with them. And what we have done is basically we have leveraged, we use the testing lifecycle within the continuous integration, and that's the reason we call it continuous integration and testing, because testing is very important even in continuous integration. Just building the code and making sure that the build is successful does not mean that the application is going to provide what you had anticipated for. You really need to test. You need to do the unit test. You need to do an integration test in the development itself. You need to make sure before you promote everything is working fine. You need to monitor it in continuous integration and testing so that you can calculate, you can basically take those metrics, baseline those metrics, and then when you promote the code, you can again do those metric baselining and compare it to see how the performance, whether the performance has improved or whether the performance has really degraded. So that's the reason that, we always say that everything starts with continuous integration and testing. Now, if you have a good framework for continuous integration and testing, and if you have successfully created the implementation of continuous integration and testing, you can really move into the continuous release and deployment, or we can call it the continuous deployment and continuous delivery, because when you move from QA to staging or staging to production, it is all about making sure you have the right processes in place, right gate in place, so that none of the applications that are not really tested are going to pass through it and go into production. That's the reason where continuous integration, continuous deployment, and continuous delivery will come into picture. And continuous deployment and continuous delivery is more about continuous release and deployment, right? That's what it is majorly. It is a release lifecycle. Whereas within continuous integration and testing, and when you add continuous deployment and continuous delivery, you have created the entire lifecycle. Once you have done that, you really need to think about, okay, once the application is in production, what am I going to do, right? How do I maintain it? How do I patch it? And that's where continuous operations will play a big role. Now, you will be wondering about continuous assessment. What is this continuous assessment? We never spoke about it. So continuous assessment is all about taking feedbacks, right? When you do continuous integration and testing, you are developing the code. You need to make sure all those information from your CI tool or from your source code management tool needs to go as feedback to the developer, to the QA engineers. The same way you need to take the test results, feed it back. You need to take the monitoring results, feed it back. So continuous assessment is all about taking all this feedback that is coming in every life cycle, like in dev, QA, staging, production, and at the same time correlating with the business, to make sure that the business also realizes that this is what is happening with the application release. And business can say, okay, you know what, this application, I know I'm fine that we have done a great job over here, but if I really don't want to release it in production because I don't see the value I'm going to get, right? So they might decide based on that, and that's where continuous assessment comes into picture. So it's not just about building continuous integration and testing and saying that, okay, I have a great continuous integration and testing, but what do I do if I cannot provide the continuous feedback, and how can I do continuous improvement? So continuous assessment is all about continuously improving the process, improving the, improving the code development, improving the test cases. So that's what, and improving the performance of the application. So,
Ajay, we have a couple of questions. Is it okay to ask those questions? Can I interrupt you real quick and dive into some of those?
Sure.
So there's a couple of questions, some tactical ones about HP nonstop platform support. Does Codar support the HP nonstop platforms?
So non-stop platforms, is that what you're talking about?
Correct.
Is this the HP Helium development platform that they are referring to, or is it when you talk about platform, you're talking about infrastructure itself, the servers?
Yeah, probably the traditional nonstop platform.
So we don't really worry about what kind of platform we need to deploy, because it's all about how we design it and how we can leverage. So like I mentioned before, our DevOps reference implementation can work with any platform, based on, we can deploy it in Amazon or any cloud platform we can do. So it's very flexible and modular.
Great. And there's a question about the HP Eclipse NSDD tool. Does it support that Eclipse tool? The HP Eclipse. Yeah.
The IDE tool?
Yes.
So like I mentioned again, I answered with the last question. Yes, we don't we don't really depend on the specific product set. It's all based on how we integrate with them, and as long as we can work with the REST APIs and any kind of integration, we will support it. So it's a very flexible. Okay.
All right, and then there's questions about integrating with HPQC or the HP ALM product suite. Obviously,
very good.
Looks like yeah, very intimately. Yeah.
I think I will not answer this question. I will let them take a look at it as when I do the demo. So it will be very clear to them that yes, HP ALM, Application Lifecycle Management, QC and PC, is a very important part of our DevOps reference implementation. Okay, it revolves around that, and you can also look at HP AGM and everything. Okay, so that's how it is. Okay. Okay, so let's go forward. I think if there is any more clarification you need, you can always put it into the questionnaire section, and we can always answer that. So no worries about that. So if you look over here, we are talking about HP DevOps by design, right? Our entire journey is based on connected intelligence. We believe that there's a need for automation, which is very key. Like I already mentioned, that automation, collaboration, and integration is key part of a DevOps, any DevOps implementation. Low latency. The reason we bring in we talk about low latency is because there are sometimes applications that you cannot deploy in your test environment. You need to really think about virtualization. So we bring in the tool set for virtualizing the services, the real application service, but at the same time we also provide you with application network virtualization, so which plays a very key role in the dev, in the QA environment, where applications cannot be really installed. So you need to start looking at virtualizing. It can be extended even for applications that can be installed. So you don't really have to think about service virtualization as something where it has always to be done in only for applications that I cannot put in production. It can virtualize any service, right? So you need to utilize service virtualization to make sure that your release velocity is accelerated, because now you're not waiting for the ops guy to really provide you with the infrastructure to do some of the things that we used to do before. Now we have the capability to go ahead and do virtualization. And then, you asked about ALM integration, and you saw that that's something that we are using for all the testing, performance testing, functional testing, business process testing. That's what we use, and also for requirements and definition, and also for defect tracing. The third one that is very key to DevOps is visibility, right? Okay, we spoke about collaboration, we spoke about integration, but how do we really provide the visibility? Because there needs to be visibility for the ops team to know what the dev and the QA guys are doing, but at the same time, you need to give visibility to the apps guy to what the ops guy is doing. Or, traditionally speaking, if I'm monitoring something in production, I as a developer would like to know how my application is performing. So those are the kind of things. So visibility is another area where it's very important. And we merge all this using the connected intelligence. And that is powered by our big data solution, right? So we are getting into the analytics. We are bringing in data analytics into the picture, which is key to do some of the predictive analysis, some of the real-time analysis to provide a good view on what is really happening with the release lifecycle. So let's get into what are the HP DevOps key features, right? We built a reference implementation. We spoke about, why DevOps and everything. But what does HP really bring into the table, right? So HP can really support multi-technology development. So in a release pipeline, you have a Java application and a .NET where you can support both. So what we are saying over here is we are open, flexible. We are not just taking one point of view. We are very flexible and modular. So if you have TFS, we will support TFS. If you're a .NET shop, TFS is your main tool set, right? If you are working with Java, we will work with most of the tool set that is available from open source, OpenStack, third party, and that's what we have been building our reference implementation on. Okay, so we are not saying that you need to go and that HP will come with a prescriptive method and say these are the tools that you need to use for DevOps. No, HP is coming with a viewpoint that you keep the investment that you have already done. We will leverage it, and we are not going to ask you to change that. We will integrate with what you have currently been using and you are used to using. Okay. We have also come up with, we recognize that testing is a big play, but at the same time, traditional testing is, is time consuming, right? Once I have a defect in the code, and if I have to rerun the entire integration test, I'm really spending a lot of time. So we came up with something called intelligent testing, or you can call change-based impact testing, what we call it. It's basically based on our ALM capability, where it is the ALI, Application Lifecycle Intelligence. We leverage that, and we basically create, we only run test cases for the specific defect, for only on the code that was, that it really affects the, the entire testing process. So only what tests are needed will be run again. So that's how we have come up with the intelligent testing, and we feel that's very important. Portfolio capabilities, right? That's another area that you will not hear a lot, because I think most of right now, everybody is thinking about continuous integration and testing and continuous delivery, continuous deployment. But when we talk about the DevOps journey, we really feel that you need to start from the business level. You need to start from the portfolio level, and then give those integration from the portfolio level, so that your portfolio managers can also see what is really happening in the release lifecycle. It's all about visibility, right? And finally, we also have virtualization capabilities. So we talk about the virtualization capabilities. I already spoke about service virtualization, network virtualization, which is a very key part of DevOps journey. And finally, last one is, we are also trying to build a platform so that, we come with VMware images or any OVF images where you can be able to download it and put it in your environment. So it's much easier to leverage rather than saying that, I need to install everything again and again. Okay? So that's what we are looking at. So quite a few things. So now let's really get into the technology mapping part of the DevOps solution, right? So if you look at the top level, it's all about solutions. And I already defined to you what is continuous assessment, continuous operation, continuous integration and testing, continuous release and deployment, right? Then, if you look at the second row from top, it's all about third parties. You will be wondering, like I mentioned before, we are not asking you to change your investment, right? We realize that HP is not strong in the development platform, development tool set. So we went ahead and integrated with the third-party tools. And you will also see when we see Codar. Codar is an application release automation tool that fits into the deployment stage, right? And that's what you're looking over here in the deployment stage. And Codar also has support into third-party tools. right? Codar leverages Chef, Codar leverages Jenkins. So that's how we have been building. Even product itself is building on top of that. Our viewpoint is very clear that we are going to embrace third-party, open source, open stack products, and we are going to support them, okay, as we move forward. And even on the services side, we do the same thing. So our reference implementation has been a very flexible modular approach where we support both HP tools and third-party tools. And in the bottom, so if you look at the third row from the top, you see the process. We talk about the planning, defining, develop, build. So we talk from planning and defining to the entire operate zone, right? And we cover all the areas with most of, we have HP tools. Right? We have a portfolio of HP tools. Right? So application lifecycle management, somebody asked about that. ALM plays a big role in every part of it, right? It plays a big role in the planning and defining. It plays a big role in, testing. And, and test is very important, right? So that's where ALM comes into picture. Monitoring tools play a big role in planning and defining, in your development integration testing, in your QA integration testing. So you see that HP has a lot of tool set that we bring onto the table, but at the same time, we are also saying that we will use what you have. So if you have a monitoring tool from some other vendor and you want to really utilize it, we will be not coming and telling you, yeah, you have to move to, if you want to use HP's DevOps solution framework, you will have to change that. No, we are not going to do that. Okay. So that's the beauty of, the HP reference implementation that we have built. It's all based on supporting third-party tools and leveraging HP tools where you have invested in HP. Okay. And, you see Chef, you see Nexus. A lot of you from the development area, you will see that most of the tool set from a development is supported. And, we are building more and more integration into third-party tools. We are also building, we are supporting Accurev, some of those Anthill Pro. So we are adding more and more tools to our integration sets. So that's how we move further. And deployment, from an infrastructure deployment perspective, we do support hybrid model, right? We support private cloud, we support public cloud, or if you're in a hybrid model, we do support hybrid model too, because HP has its own public cloud. So that's one big advantage. But at the same time, HP also can create a private cloud for you using our product set of Codar and CSA, operations orchestrator, database and middleware automation. So there's a lot of, products in our portfolio that really helps us build the entire DevOps journey. Okay, so now let's get into the real discussion on Codar, right? As I mentioned, Codar is application release automation tool, okay? So now you will ask me, what is the difference, right? Well, we have heard about application release automation. There's a lot of application release automation tools today, right? Our differences, basically, we have come up, we are the first company to come up with a declarative-based topology model, and this is all in Codar, okay? Codar is the tool set that we are talking over here. It's configuration management using declarative-based topology model. All the other tool set that you have in the market today are all process-based topology model. What it means is basically when you say process-based, it's all about saying step 1 do this, step 2 do this, step 3 do this. Whereas in declarative-based topology model, you just define the end result, and we have the intelligence built into the product, which will automatically realize how does, whether the database should be installed first or whether the web server should be installed first, and go ahead and do that. So that's where Codar is a big differentiator in the market. And Codar provides you with a GUI-based topology modeling. If you talk to some of the, if you are talking to people, they will also say Chef also does the same thing. But Chef does not provide you with a GUI-based topology modeling. Chef is more of a script-based modeling where you write scripts, you create recipes, you create chef books. But with Codar, with HP's Codar tool, you basically get a GUI-based topology model where you can drag and drop your designs. So you basically just say, end result, this are number of servers I need, this is the platform I need, and it will automatically create the relationship for you. Very key, important part. Second one is, all about infrastructure as code, right? If you look at DevOps, application side, we have done a great job with, committing code into the source code management system. With Codar, what we are saying, we also need to do infrastructure and commit it to the, commit it to a source code management system where you can do version management on your infrastructure itself. And when I say infrastructure, it's not just, deploying servers. We are talking about a platform, right? It can be an application that you really want to do. So the modeling, whatever modeling you did using the declarative-based topology modeling to functionality, you can store that, export that as a JSON file, and store it in a source code management system. And now you can provide the JSON file to the developers or to the QA guys where they can go edit the JSON file to say, okay, I want to change the configuration of this server from 2 CPUs to 4 CPUs, or I want to increase the memory. They can do that, or at that level, commit those JSON file again to the source code management system, and tell Codar, I want to use this JSON file, and Codar will go create the topology model for you and go deploy it for you. So that's where infrastructure as a code again plays a big role, but it comes with a difference. The difference is that you create the topology model, you take it, you change it, and then Codar will automatically leverage it when you want to deploy the application. So it's all based on how you orchestrate the entire functionality. The last one is the pipeline management. So everybody, if you have used Jenkins, you see pipeline management in Jenkins. With Codar, we also provide pipeline management where we can really look at where the application is. So if the application is in dev, you can promote it to QA, deploy it into QA. But at the same time, it also allows you to use different infrastructure in different stages. So dev can have a different infrastructure, a different platform, whereas QA can have a different infrastructure, different platform. Production, you might want to deploy a new infrastructure, or you might want to just go ahead and use the existing infrastructure. So it's very flexible from that point of view, and it provides you with the release pipeline management. So let's look at the customer challenges and visibility today, right? And why Codar? Everybody will ask the question. One is lack of visibility. Right? And if you have a tool that provides you with the deployment capability, the modeling capability, the infrastructure as a code capability, and also provides you with the pipeline visibility, that's an amazing. That's what we just see everything what we really need to see. Second one is all about long time it takes to automate. So like I mentioned about Chef, you need to write scripts, and you need to automate those kind of things using script. Whereas with declarative-based modeling, we have the intelligence built in. You just drag and drop, which is much easier than creating or writing every script every time you want to create. Third one is all about inconsistent deployment. Right? You basically, when you have scripts, you have a different methodology. If you don't have a tool that can model everything, you cannot have consistent deployments. That's where Codar plays a big role. It basically allows you to deploy consistently, right? And the fourth one is siloed behavior, right? Basically, what you are looking over here is, basically what we are saying is that we are coming up with APIs, open public APIs that you can use to create, to integrate with Jenkins and do what you want with Jenkins. So it's all about, leveraging, supporting the open stack, open source product, but at the same time providing all the capabilities that you need to really, give you that application release automation experience that none of the tools today can do in the market. Okay, so let's just take a look at, why HP professional services, right? It's all about, where I mentioned about this before. It's all about services-led, management, consulting-led engagement, because there's a lot of things that you need to really look into when you're taking the DevOps journey. It's the people, process, and technology. What is it that is going to change? So our approach is very simple. We start with workshops, right? We start with transformation workshop where we engage with the enterprise and we understand what their pain points are. We bring in everybody on the table and they all discuss about their pain points and we come up with a roadmap. Once the roadmap is provided, we can also do a deep technical software solution discovery workshop where we can go deep and we start looking at the maturity model. But the maturity model might say, hey, you guys have, the biggest challenge you have is provisioning. Your release velocity is, really, the big problem with release velocity is because you really don't have automated provisioning. we will provide you with those information. Or it could be saying that, test automation is your biggest challenge, where you have a lot of manual tests, you need to really convert them into automated tests. So that's where we do the assessment, we come up with a maturity model, we really build our journey based on those maturity models, and we phase the implementation based on that. Okay. Second one is all about processes and best practices. We are just not coming up and saying that we will integrate this tool with this tool. We are also coming up with real process models that we have really worked with customers, and we know how exactly needs to be done. Like example would be Agile requirement. How do I do Agile requirement? Or how do I do incident management in a DevOps scenario? Those kind of things we have already created those models, so we can come and really implement it much easier. Last one is all about implementation services. It's any services organization, especially software services organization always relies on implementation services. So we have a lot of consultants who are very, who are really experts with HP toolset, and they are also good developers who can integrate with third-party toolset. So that's where we bring the value with the implementation services. And last and the final one is the managed services, where what we say is that basically we can provide you a platform, DevOps platform, where you can come, you can use it, and it's all hosted and maintained by us. Or we can maintain your DevOps platform within your enterprise by using our services organization. So that's where, that's what we bring, that's what the capabilities and services we bring to the table. Now let's get and take a look at the demo, okay? So I'm just going to, I need to change my,
and Ajay, this is Paul. Just wanted to do a quick time check. We're about 15 minutes from the end of time here, so just want to keep everything moving forward. All right.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So let's start with the DevOps journey. This is a small video that I would like to present with what we have done. So what we have done is basically a developer will log into his respective ID. He will change the code or write a code based on a requirement or defect. He will commit the code to the repository in source code management tool. And once he commits it, the CI tool will go trigger the build. It will successfully trigger the infrastructure deployment, the platform deployment, and so that's what you're seeing over here. We are leveraging Jenkins, and you see in Jenkins what we will be doing, right? This is where we go change the code, okay? So basically, this is the TFS1. What I'm showing you is basically changing the code in Visual Studio. That's what you're seeing over here, okay? So we'll go change the code, and then once the code is committed, you will see how we deploy infrastructure using Codar, and that's the whole, reason for us having this webinar is to talk about Codar. So I just want to show you how Codar works, and then, we can take Q&A, okay? So this is where the code is committed, and you see that, we have created some sort of, where we have to really enter run_build so that we know exactly that this is the build I want to go ahead and, trigger off and basically deploy infrastructure, because we don't want to deploy infrastructure every time. But at the same time, we also integrate with UCMDB. We keep information about the last version, the current version, so that we provide you visibility. We spoke about visibility, right? Once the build is successful, what you're seeing is that we upload the build to a Nexus artifact repository. So this is the build scenario, right? So once the build is completed and the build is successful, next what we are going to do is we are going to go into Codar, and Codar is going to deploy. So this is where I was talking about the GUI-based design. This is what we are talking about. So you see that this is the designer that you have. So you basically create the design in such a way. You just drag and drop your components, and this can be, the components can be a chef recipe, a chef cookbook, or it can be a network configuration or anything you want, or like, a WebSphere install. Everything can be done using Codar over here, okay? So let's look at the editor just to showcase you. This is how we build. So you see how we build that, one Linux server, one Windows server, and how the relationships are existing over there, okay? And we also have packages so that it can deploy the packages over there. So this is the release pipeline management that you're seeing. So now what is happening is we are going to go deploy Java-based application on using Codar on the server that we are going to deploy. Okay. So this is where Codar comes into the picture. Codar is very, very important for the entire DevOps story. It also goes and deploys monitoring probes. Like I mentioned before, that monitoring is key part of it. And we use Chef to go deploy the application. So you see how the server got deployed, and now you see all the attributes. You will be able to see that, some of this application got deployed, and this is where we got the artifact from the Nexus repository, and we went ahead and deployed the application onto the server that was deployed and registered into Codar, and that server also had monitoring probes deployed. Once the application is deployed, once the provisioning is completed, that's when we will go ahead and run our, test cycle. And that's where, you will see over here. You just want to show the server was deployed with certain configuration, right? 2 or CPUs, 4 gig of memory. So that's what you're looking over here, okay? And then we go into the testing. So you can always deploy the server. You can test it before deploying it using Codar, or you can go ahead and make sure that you just go ahead and deploy it, and Codar will take care of that. And in the back end, you will see operations orchestration. If you have lots of people would have seen that. That's where we are using operation orchestrator in the back end to really go ahead and do the entire automation piece. So once the application is deployed, you see all the information is coming back, right? It deployed a Tomcat, zip file, and also it deployed the application code itself. That was the WAR file that we had, successfully created using Codar. Using Jenkins. And now this is where the test cases are run. Everything is automated. The only thing that the developer needed to do was go into his IDE, commit the code, and then everything else is automated in the backend. And this is what is DevOps, right? This is all about, how do I really remove all the manual intervention and try to automate it as much as possible. And that's what you are seeing over here is basically what we did over here is we ran the entire integration and we completed the development lifecycle. We deployed, and then once we are done, we uninstalled everything. So we went ahead and undeployed the server, the platform, and we went ahead and stored it back into the artifact repository. So that's the demo I have for you for today. And now let's get into the Q&A section. So we can cover the, so what I wanted to show with the demo was basically how we have automated the entire thing and how Codar plays a big role with the deployment of infrastructure, deployment of platform, and deployment of application, and how we leveraged application lifecycle management to run test cases automatically so that it ran the functional test and the performance test, and we stored back the results to, to ALM. And for those continuous assessment purpose, we can take those feedback and start looking into how we continuously improve. Okay?
Excellent.
So let's go back to the
slides. Ajay, number of questions. Some of them are kind of in the same category. So we did see the demo using Jenkins and Nexus and Maven. I was wondering if the same solution with Codar works with things like Team City, Artifactory, Miracle. I can never say it right here, but
yes, very good question. Like I think I have been emphasizing on this every time. Is basically that it's a very flexible, modular, reference architecture. What we are doing over here is we are showing some of the tools that are very, everybody is leveraging, open source, OpenStack. But at the same time, we are integrating with other tool sets, like TeamCity is one of those. That's a CI tool. We're actually, doing those integrations. Accurev is a source code management tool that we are integrating with, and Hill Pro. So we are actually working, working to integrate with multiple different systems that are in the market.
Excellent. And a number of questions about some of the HP portfolio as well. So there were questions around integrations with HP CDA, HP PPM, HP portfolio management, and HP Helion. Do you have any responses to some of those questions?
Sure. So very good, the HP PPM, if you look at it, is basically coming into the planning and defining stage. Like, I mentioned about how we start with the portfolio, and then we really want to take, because of the business can also see what is really happening with the release cycle. So HP portfolio plays a big role in the tasks and funding. Do I have the approval for going forward with this thing? So we leverage a PPM and we integrate the tasks in PPM to user stories or features in ALM or in AGM, which is the Agile Manager tool from HP. Right. So that's where HP PPM comes into picture. At the same time, we also have PPM integrated with Service Manager so that whenever we create a task in PPM, we can also create a RFC in Service Manager, so which can be leveraged. So when I promote my code from one stage to another, I can update the RFC to say that the code has been promoted from dev to QA and everything was successful, or it was not successful and I make the RFC, I don't close the RFC or I update the RFC. So that's how we have leveraged PPM into HP Helium Development Platform. Good question, is based on Cloud Foundry. And if you all know, HP Helium Development Platform is something where, you cannot just implement it without really giving a big thought process on how you are going to change your application development. Because Helium Development Platform is all about making sure that your existing application is transformed into a cloud-ready application. And that's where Helium Development Platform is going to be going to play a big role. And we do integrate with HDP. We also, are working on integrating with Docker, especially Codar allows you to even deploy application into a Docker container. Okay? And Codar is going to support HDP in the near future.
Great. So a handful of other questions. We saw the Codar working with Chef, but does it also work with Puppet and Ansible?
So it is, what you saw is just a reference architecture, reference implementation. Yes, because in the back end, it's all about, like I said, if Puppet is one of the things, yes, we support. Ansible is also something very similar, so it's very easy for us to integrate. It's just that we need to create the resource provider, which allows us to use REST API and connect to Ansible so that it can also deploy what you need. Because end of the day, remember, Puppet, Chef, Ansible are all going to work as a deployer. Codar is your modeling tool. And how you tell Codar how to use Ansible or how to use Chef or how to use Puppet is very simple, right? Because we have operation orchestration in the back end, which is going to do that for us.
Excellent. I think there's a number of other questions. I think a lot of repeat questions here about HP ALM. Does it work? How does it work with the ALM processes? I think you did show a couple of those pieces. Maybe that's something for a follow-up question.
Sure.
And I think there's just some generic questions about how do you manage, or how would you help an organization explore the whole DevOps journey? What is it that you can do? What can you provide? What does HP do to help people with this journey and transition with all the many tools and community efforts that need to get involved?
So very good question. It all starts with assessing, right? What is it that we are really doing? Because DevOps is not a tool, right? DevOps is more of a transformation, more of a framework that you want to adapt so that you can accelerate the release velocity, right? HP, because HP has a good knowledge of implementing tool set, but at the same time implementing processes and taking a customer and transforming a customer's requirement, right? That's where HP plays a big role. So like we mentioned, with HP services and product team working very closely, we surely can take you through the entire journey. It will not just be about HP coming in because HP we involved HP and now HP comes with a list of 15 to 20 HP products. No, that's not how we do things. We bring in the right product, we assess your existing tool set, and we are going to recommend on what you should be doing. So that's the way we approach taking customers through a DevOps journey. So it's the right tool set, right processes, maturity model. So it's all about people, process, and technology, starting with assessment and then moving forward to make sure that we can guide you through the journey. And we will also provide you with a roadmap on how you really need to move. So it's a phased approach. It's never a approach where you come and say, hey, do the DevOps. And we come and say, yeah, okay, we'll build you the complete DevOps in a certain time period. No, it's a journey that you really need to look at. So HP realizes that, and that's what HP is going to bring value to you. Okay, any more questions?
Sorry, I was on mute. My question was about support for OpenShift on PaaS. Is there any position that you guys have with Codar and OpenShift? Does it support it?
So currently I don't have an answer to that question. I think that's something we can follow up because I need to take it to the product management more than talking from what is really coming up in the future. Right?
Okay.
But there's a lot of integration that we are working on. Yeah.
Sure. So the last question, is it available for evaluation? Is this readily available for download? Can people get access to it? What do you suggest?
So Codar, yes. If Codar is readily available, that's a community edition free of cost, readily available for download. And I think Kerry can help provide more information on that. Kerry, would you like to?
Okay.
Kerry?
So,
yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yes, so it is available if you just go to the Codar website, which is hp.com/go/Codar, C-O-D-A-R, and that will there's a free trial there that you can download.
Excellent. So we're coming up on the top of the hour here, and I'd like to just kind of end with a couple of slides. I don't know if you've got the ability to jump into the last of the couple slides here. There you go. Just a reminder that, Vivid is a great community to network with each other, to learn. We do have a SIG dedicated to the DevOps conversation that I manage and enjoy answering questions as they pop up. But likewise, there's a great place to meet with strategic folks that are really tied to the products that drive your business. And that would be at the HP Discover event in June down in Las Vegas. I strongly recommend that if you have interest in Codar, if you've got interest in how you pull your HP portfolio of technologies together, this event may be a great place to meet the people that can give you answers in terms of where the roadmaps are headed and what kind of integrations are possible with the product sets themselves. We'd like to see you both in Vivid on a regular basis and like to come and visit us in our booth at the show itself. It'd be great to have you there. And I think we've got one more slide. Excellent. So we do have a place where you can take a short survey, and we hope that you will jump in here and answer questions about how we're doing in terms of educating and connecting the Vivid members and the community itself. Again, we thank you for taking the time to come and visit us and to allow us to present with HP the product families that are out there and just kind of explore the whole DevOps conversation together. Ajay, been excellent. I appreciate you taking the time and pushing us through as quickly as you have. It's a deep and profound conversation in terms of helping organizations transform their IT and development practices. You did an excellent job walking us through HP's continued investment in the space. So with that, I would like to thank you and appreciate everybody's time. If you have any more questions, continue to push those questions into our organization. The chat will stay open for a few more minutes, and we'd like to be able to address those as much as possible. Again, thanks for joining us today. Ajay, really appreciate your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.